What's up, everyone? Welcome into the All 22 NFL show, the official channel of the All 22 fantasy football platform. It's the only fantasy football game with full 53-man rosters, including offensive linemen, where you get to choose personnel packages and have access to PFF grading and advanced stats to make decisions each week. To learn more, go to all-22.com. You can sign up, but I will warn you that if you sign up, reach out to us. We will get you put into a league. You cannot create new leagues right now, but still a really fun thing to do. We'd love to have you. We'd love to get you involved. So go to all-22.com or send us an email at info@all-22.com to find out more. Ray, I have been, I'm a man of prayer, right? I'm a man of prayer. A lot of my prayers lately have been going out to you, my friend. I know you did a really nice thing for your dad. You took him out to Penn State for, the Oregon game, thinking that, this is an opportunity to put you guys in the first place. And following that game, and the reason we haven't been podcasting, so, wanted to apologize to everyone. But Ray's dad had him checked into a mental health institute.
That's not why we have
because he went clinically insane.
Probably should check into a mental health institute.
He's back with us now. 3 weeks of treatment, a lot of shock therapy, a little lobotomy, and we finally have Ray back on the stage.
It's been 16 days. It has not been 3 weeks, number one. But it's some stuff. You always learn more post-mortem, right? And as you know, talked to a lot of people down there. Stuff that'll probably bubble up and we would talk about during our draft evaluation process in the offseason when we start talking about some of these guys. Some relevant stuff related to that. So we will park that there because I'm not going to talk about that anymore, Chris, because we are kind of like a third away through the season since the NFL just kind of decided to just throw a 17th game in there and just ruin all the math. Like some teams have played 6 games. Some teams have played 5 games. I feel like that kind of averages out to like a third of the way through the season now, basically. So it's a pretty good time to, kind of level set here and see where things stand. Do a deep dive into some surprising names, which kind of helped me make some of my blind bids that I've already submitted for this week as we sit here and record on Tuesday afternoon, very shortly after the weekly grades and scores have been finalized. It's a good week to be proactive and really start to take this bull by the horns, because before we know it, another third of the season, we're basically near the playoffs in all 22. So this thing comes fast and furious at you.
Yeah, well, you know what? You were telling me a lot about how I need to really dig into that Drew Aller film to see what his performance looked like in some of those really tough games, right? You said maybe there's something I'm not seeing. I'm excited to get into it. Maybe we'll do a little deep dive pretty soon on Drew Aller since, his season is over, sadly. But I would very much look forward to that. And like you said, there's a lot of decisions that we could be making right now because of what's going on in the college football world. Ray, this week, I kind of had an idea, right? Because there's so many people out there doing kind of like game by game breakdowns. I don't think that's something we need to do every week. I don't think that's necessarily our game. But enough of the season has gone by now where the performances that we're seeing start to tell a narrative of how the season will continue to go, right? And there are players that are relevant right now that likely will continue to be relevant. And I think it's noteworthy what their performances have looked like. And I wanted to maybe start with the veteran players. Let's go through. I have a list of, I think it's 10 guys that we can go through. You could go through yours. Maybe we just kind of go back and forth and talk about some of the guys that have surprised us so far this season. And I was going to start off just by saying Kyle Pitts is my number 10 on the list. So I'd say Kyle Pitts. I think a lot of people have been just writing off Kyle Pitts because he's a receiver, right? He's a tight end, but he's really a receiver playing tight end. He hasn't really been producing big yards, which for fantasy football is typically a deal breaker. But because we're all 22, it's more than that, right? The total game grade matters. And 71.5 offensive grade so far is good for tight end 8 in all 22 in PFF. And he has a 64.3 run blocking grade, which is the best of his early career. This is a dude that's still like 25, 26 years old, whatever he is. I think it's positive, right? And if you were giving up on Kyle Pitts, just understand something that Ray and I always say over and over and over again. Not everybody's Tyler Warren. Not everybody is Brock Bowers. Most tight ends that enter the NFL take 5 years plus to really learn the position and become a fantasy relevant player. Kyle Pitts is no different, right? So to see him, in year, 4 or 5 for him, start to kind of prove himself, I love that. And so far in this early season, he's done a good job, good enough for tight end 8. So a lot to like there for Kyle Pitts early on in the season. And I'll hand it to you. Who do you got on your list?
Yeah, I'll also just give a shout out to, you mentioned his run blocking grade. It's the best of his young career. Well, last night against the Bills was his best run blocking grade of the season, 73.1 on 27 run blocking snaps. So that was a large portion of his contribution to the team last night. And obviously, like you already mentioned, that shows up in all 22. So he's kind of building a nice baseline floor for his run blocking where, like you said, his bread is buttered as a receiver. But if you got a nice baseline there, that can really help you out there for that tight end grading week to week. And he's just coming into his own. He's probably 25 years old. I feel like I should know this, but it feels like he came into the league he's 25 years old, came into the league at 20 years old. So it's still an incredibly young tight end. He might only be like 18 months older than Tyler Warren, for example. So just to put some of that into perspective. So still a very young tight end. So good shout out there for Kyle Pitts. I'm going to go with another player here. I'm going to save my told you so's because I like to kick these off by like just proving myself right. Like, oh, I'm pleasantly surprised by this person. And in reality,
I have one of those for you too.
Yeah, I got a lot of those for me. So I'm going to put that aside now. And I'm going to go to another player who has a lot of talent, came into the league as a young player, and never really put it all together, but can solve a lot of problems for a lot of all 22 users. He's still available now in just 25% of leagues. So people have pretty much caught on over the last couple of weeks. But guard Ed Ingram for the Houston Texans, now in his 4th year from LSU. He was always talented, but it never really clicked. 2022, 57.0, 2023, 59.5, 2024, 54.0. Now, through the 2025 season, now a third of the way done, he's the highest graded guard in the NFL at 84.0. Only 7 total pressures allowed this year, which is tied for 13th lowest or fewest among all guards. But in run blocking, he's the second highest graded run blocking guard at 86.1 behind only Quentin Nelson. So, he's just on a complete tear. And this is, again, just a huge change from where he's been for the first 3 years of his career. He's also the second highest graded run blocker in gap scheme runs and 12th highest in zone. So it's not just a sort of one trick pony type of deal here where only one sort of set of plays or schematics works for him. He's getting it done in all phases. Yes, run blocking is his bread and butter, but like I just mentioned with that pressure stat, he's doing just fine with regards to pass blocking as well. He's pretty much the lone bright spot on that Texans offensive line. 3 of the other 4 remaining players have graded less than 60 for the year thus far. And so, again, really kind of came out of nowhere, but they really needed it this year, them being the Texans. Guard Ed Ingram. And we talk about how guard is not a very deep position in the league. There's a few great ones, several good ones, and then really a lot of sort of mediocrity there. Starting to stand out, I think, at just 26 years old. This is someone where if you're still in a quarter of leagues, he may be available to you. And if you're in the other 75%, then you might have missed out. But this is a player that was always talented, but looks like he's finally starting to put it together in a not great situation. It's not like you threw him in, the Eagles offensive line as like the gap fill at guard, and now he's grading well. No, he's at the Texans. He's not surrounded by anything great, and he's still producing. So this is a true sort of progression for a young player into sort of his physical ceiling. So I think it's sustainable when you consider that, even if there are maybe some bumps in the road because of his situation, he's shown that he can hang and that this performance is his and not the result of his environment.
That's a great call out. I had him on my list as well, but I'm going to stay with that same kind of sentiment, which is if you looked at Miami this offseason, they had 2 massive needs, right? It was offensive line and it was defensive back. And Rasul Douglas is currently cornerback 4 in the NFL in terms of PFF grading with an 82.2 defensive grade and 83.1 coverage grade in Miami. That's exactly what they needed, right? Like that is why, although I think they're 1-5 on the year, it's like they're still being competitive in some of these games. It's because of a player like that stepping up and filling a need, right? Green Bay traded him to Buffalo, I believe. Then he leaves Buffalo, goes to Miami. Like, this is a guy that teams essentially haven't fully invested in. But I think after this year, Miami's going to have to fully invest in a guy like Douglas and keep him around. So very excited on that one. I'm going to do two really quick here. The next one I wanted to say is Latu, right? If you talk about guys that have taken that next step from a, somewhat underwhelming rookie season, 90.2 defensive grade and 19 hurries. He's currently edge 7 in PFF grading in the All-22 platform. So another guy that I'm very excited about and very high on, right? Because he's a guy last year that we were saying maybe he's not that high-level number one edge that you expect, like a Micah Parsons and Nick Bosa in the draft. But he was a very just consistent down and down out technician type of edge rusher. And here he is finally showing up and kind of getting the fruits of the investment that a lot of you probably made in him.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I'm still scared because of his injury history. So that's one of those things where you're always kind of just scared and worried about a player who was forced to medically retire. But yeah, he's come on like a gangbuster here. So I'm going to give you another young player that's sort of breaking out, same draft class. Cedric Gray, the linebacker for the Titans.
Okay.
Second-year player, fourth-round pick from North Carolina. I don't think we did a film breakdown of him, Chris, but we did discuss him during our 2024 draft class linebacker discussion.
I think maybe we did.
Or maybe we did, and I just don't remember because I've been, according to you, in a mental institution for the last 16 days. So, with that said, I think the general sentiment and takeaway was he's pretty good, but he's not really well coached. Like, things just don't seem to be very organized over there in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And hence why they made the change for Bill Belichick. And well, we could see how that's going. So putting that all aside, seems like maybe he's kind of put it together in the league in a better, sort of structured environment. Although it's not like the Titans are a great environment either, but he's the second highest graded run defender in the league behind your boy, Jack Campbell, at 91.8 overall. And what I like about this is his coverage grade currently is only 65.7. He's kind of right there in sort of the average, maybe slightly above average when you consider it's a linebacker sort of category there. So he's being buoyed, look that up, Chris, it's a word, by the sort of more stable fundamental parts of playing linebacker. Okay.
Right, I know what words mean. I just can't say them.
Or spell. I bet you can't spell that either. Fifth grade champ over here, though. So he has the 7th lowest missed tackle rate of all linebackers in the NFL at just 4.9%. So again, 84.9 overall, 91.8 run blocking, run defense, and 79.1 overall grade tackling. That sounds like a pretty tough, sound, solid, fundamental linebacker to me. And again, maybe you're concerned that he's on the Titans and, that's a bad, where are things going to slip for the latter half of the year here? And maybe things fall back a bit, maybe, but this is a young ascending player at a really not deep position that I always talk about linebacker. This is someone you should add to your sort of week to week rotation based on matchups here, because like you said, we're a third of the way through here. And this is not just a couple blips on the radar now. This is a trend with a young, talented player who's still available in 34% of all 22 leagues. So people have started to catch on, but there's still a decent chance you might be able to get him on waivers.
So I had Cedric Gray, 65 overall in the 2024 class, one spot behind Dominic Poona. So we had both those guys on our radar a little bit, but, probably lower than they should have been. So congratulations to the Titans. They do need a bright spot right now, so happy for them. I am going to shout out a couple other guys that are maybe a little bit pat on the back to me. Nick Herbig, right? I've always been kind of a Nick Herbig guy. 90.5 defensive grade, 5 sacks, 8 QB hits, and an 89.7 pass rushing grade. Good for edge 5. Like, great year for him. It's funny, man. Pittsburgh just keeps developing these fantastic defensive kind of front 7 players. And Nick Herbig is just the most recent. You probably want to kind of take your little victory lap on Divine Diablo for Atlanta this year, because I remember when he got signed to Atlanta, I made a comment being like, that's what they're doing. Like, that's the guy they're going after. And you're like, nah, dude, he's like really good. And I was like, I don't know, bro. That's not getting me too excited. He's good for linebacker 3 right now with an 89.2 grade. So shout out to you on that one. That's another guy to definitely be excited about right now. But how about Poona Ford, right? Poona Ford, Rams defensive interior, coming from the Chargers, right across kind of the town. Good for defensive interior 5 with an 85.3 defensive grade and an 83.0 run defensive grade. Maybe a lot of you were saying, why is that surprising, right? Last year, he had a breakout year. Part of me felt that maybe that was just due to kind of the coaching in Los Angeles with the Chargers. He was getting kind of bumped up by good coaching, good situation. They were using him the right way. Maybe the Rams are doing the same thing, but now we're seeing multiple years of this same kind of performance. So he's somebody now that I'm saying might be worth either going and making a trade for, trying to get an investment in, or just if you have him, he's like an every game starter at this point. So very exciting for Poona Ford owners.
Yeah, super solid throughout. Not the longest term asset, I would think, right? Given he's going to be 30 this year, but he's probably still got a solid 2 years left, right, on the interior there. Given his play style and type, 5'11", 310, that is just such a tank right there in the middle. That is so hard to get under and win the leverage battle. So, good call out there for Poona Ford. Since we seem to be transitioning into the prove ourselves right category, I do only have 2 names left, and they're pretty mainstream. So I'm about to go mainstream here, which is a little bit antithetical to what we do. But we're going to talk about quarterbacks here. So again, this segment we're talking about like pleasant surprises. It's hard to be surprised when you just call these things ahead of time, right, Chris? I mean, that's just, it's hard, right?
Let's hear it.
Not much surprises me, but Dak Prescott is the second highest graded quarterback in the NFL behind Sam Darnold, who I'll get to in a second. But in any event, let's stick with Dak Prescott for a minute because he has been a forgotten man. I know we talked about him a couple weeks back, but I think he deserves and warrants more discussion. He's third in big time throws in the league right now with 14, behind only Baker Mayfield and Matthew Stafford, who have 15 each. So just one more. Only 5 turnover-worthy plays, an 81.5% adjusted completion percentage. And he's done this with CeeDee Lamb injured for about half the year now, right? But that's not all. At different points and at times overlapping, he's missed his left tackle, left guard, center, and right guard due to injury, along with playing with a historically bad defense on the other side of his team. So he can't enjoy a good game script that allows him to play it safe, hand the ball off, stay in front of the chains, not have to take chances with the ball. No, this guy has to score pretty much every possession if his team wants to win the game because it is a legitimately historically poor defense. So he is taking on a lot of stressors, both on the offensive side and then just from a total team standpoint and trying to make up for the other side of the ball while being shorthanded. And he's doing it with just spectacular fashion here. So Dak Prescott deserves his flowers for sure based on his performance this year. If it wasn't such a historically poor defense, he would be and should be in the MVP conversation with his numbers and his metrics and everything he's doing to keep that side of the ball afloat. There's your alarm again to interrupt me, but anyway, that's a perfect transition into the next name. I'm going to double up here and stay at quarterback because, again, maybe a surprise to some people, but not to us, and we'll talk about why. Sam Darnold. We mentioned way back.
Before you do, my alarm's done.
Okay.
Before you do, I'm a Dak supporter. I've always been a Dak supporter. Like I want to take a little victory lap on that one too, because the guys I play in a lot of leagues with are mad at me because I actually waited on quarterback in a lot of these startup drafts to like the 3rd round, 4th round, something like that. And I got Dak because I was excited about Dak, and I think people sleep on Dak. I think Dak is a really good quarterback. Unfortunately for Dak, it's going to be probably a few years before Dallas is really good again, and he's already kind of starting to inch up to kind of an older quarterback in the NFL. So I wonder if he's going to get to be a part of a good situation at any point in the rest of his prime. But still, like Dak Prescott is a good quarterback, and people are really too hard on him. Now go ahead and talk about Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I follow that same strategy in one of our serious leagues last year. All the leagues are serious, but there's some name people in this league. And that's when he got injured and I finished in last place. So I pretty much banked my league strategy on that. But in any event, this year, Dak deserves his flowers and should be talked about more. Now, Darnold, if you remember back in the offseason, we said this when he went to Seattle that the fit was a good one because of the prominence of play action with that offense and what that should do for Sam Darnold. Well, he's the highest graded passer in the NFL on play action throws, has 6 big time throws off of play action to just 1 turnover worthy play on a 16.7 average depth of target, which is by far first in the league on play action throws. For some context, second highest ADOT on play action is Caleb Williams at 11.0, so 11 yards average depth of target there. And for further reference, okay, Tua and Hurts are tied for 25th in ADOT at 5.5 on play action passes. So the gap between first and second is roughly the same as the gap between second and 25th when it comes to Sam Darnold versus everyone else off of play action. So he's not just throwing the ball deep and taking chances, but he's making big time throws. He's getting in a rhythm. This sort of, downhill attack, this works. It just works. So I'm a big fan of what they're doing with Sam Darnold. Again, it's hard to be surprised. I know this is supposed to be a surprising segment here, but the fit just works. So a lot of people are still skeptical about Sam Darnold leaving Kevin O'Connell and that quarterback-friendly situation. But again, styles make fights, and this style just works for Sam Darnold. So even if on paper it's a lesser situation, it's perfect for Sam Darnold.
Dude, you hit that one out of the park, but I will continue to be cautious on Sam Darnold until we get through an entire season, because we saw what Sam Darnold did last year. Until he proves that he could do it for a complete season and doesn't just all of a sudden in week 14 become a pumpkin.
The line got hurt. Chris.
I'm going to be skeptical. So let's see this kind of continue to transpire before we start celebrating, although you already have. But, you said a lot about Sam Darnold. The one thing you forgot to say is he's also just number 1 in PFF grade at quarterback with a 93.7. So, fantastic season so far for Sam Darnold. And one of his receivers is a guy I had on this list as well, in Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who is wide receiver 2 in the NFL right now with a 91.5 receiving grade, 696 receiving yards, which is good for first in the NFL. Listen, I liked Jaxon Smith-Njigba as a prospect. Never did I think he was going to be the number 1 receiver in the NFL. Again, I want to see it for a full season, but I didn't expect this from him. And I've been hearing people talk about how maybe the archetype of what a receiver is in the NFL is truly changing from the Julio Jones, Calvin Johnson, big body guys to more of these, not necessarily small, but just like more technician route runner type receivers that can win with pure technique. Jaxon Smith-Njigba, Justin Jefferson are those guys, right? Like those are the guys that are starting to win more often in the NFL. I think Egbuka is another example of that, right? A rookie coming up and automatically being good as just a pure technician type receiver. So very, very interesting there. Last guy I had on my list was Derek Brown, right? And I don't think anybody's surprised about Derek Brown. So I'm not necessarily saying it's a surprise, but coming off of like a year where he was out due to injury, to come back and so early in the season be this dominant. He's currently defensive interior 3 with an 87.1 defensive grade, 81.0 run defensive grade, 11 stops, right? Like that is fantastic play. And again, like we talk about teams that are starting to be competitive a little bit, right? And starting to win football games. Carolina, right, is a team that we didn't really expect to be very good this year. And they're still maybe not. But when you have guys like that putting up great performances, it helps you be competitive at all. And I think that's what we're seeing is Carolina starting to fight in some of these games. And it's due to guys like Derek Brown and their performances.
Yeah, that's a good one, especially again coming off some injury and stuff too. It's good to see the quick bounce back. So I'm a lot of names. I ended on my victory lap if you're done with the vets.
I'm good there too. Why don't we move over to, we're not talking about surprises now. We're just talking about maybe our top 10 rookies. Okay. And I think we could do it in a similar way, but this time we'll go like my 10, your 10, 9, 9, right? All the way to 1.
I did not do that much detail. I just wrote down some rookie. I don't even know how many I have. It might not even be 10. It might be like 6. So if you want to be organized and like follow
That's
the rules,
fine.
you could do it.
No. We'll just talk. We're just going to have everybody scratch what I just said. We're just going to have a conversation about some rookies that we like.
You can't count on me to be structured like that.
Yeah, especially when like we write out an agenda. Don't worry about it, people. We're here. We're here. Remember, he's coming out of a mental institution, so this is the rate we're getting.
That's right.
I do have an honorable mention that I wanted to talk about first, and that's Xavier Watts, right? Xavier Watts is a guy that I'll continue to mention, but he's an honorable mention because he's still not necessarily a stud in the NFL, but he is a very good starter with a 68.4 defensive grade, 4 stops on the season. He already has 2 pick sixes, Ray. Like, what? So just again, wanted to shout out him before we really got into this, just saying that I think Atlanta, again, they won a game last night in a big fashion against a really good Buffalo team. It's because of performances like this. And when you hit on draft picks like that with Xavier Watts, why teams get to be competitive. Don't know if you have Donovan Ezeiruaku on your list, but I thought that's a guy that maybe we'd both want to talk about really quick, right? Because we talk about teams and when they need a player to step up, and this is that for Dallas, right? They traded away Micah Parsons, and they needed somebody on the edge to step up. And so far, I think Ezeiruaku's done a decent job of that with a 72.0 defensive grade, 8 QB hits, 7 stops, a 66.5 defensive grade, run defensive grade, and a 92.1 grade last week against the Panthers. Like, we're talking about guys that start to have this slow rise into startable player, into potential star, right? And over the last few weeks, we've been seeing that more and more from Ezeiruaku. So a player that Dallas definitely needed. And you probably watch way more Dallas than I do. Just curious what you've seen out of him.
Yeah, the trade with Micah Parsons essentially moved everyone up a notch in the pecking order, which could be a bad thing because it takes them out of the role that they were expecting, but perhaps the role that's best for them, right? A number 2 complimentary rusher now is all of a sudden the number 1 guy, right? You're all of a sudden relying a lot more on Dante Fowler than you expected to be. Marshawn Nealon is not just a standard 2-down edge player anymore. Now he's also being asked to pick up the slack in the pass rush game as well. Donovan Ezeiruaku, young player, expected to be maybe a situational pass rush specialist, and they're still trying to sort of use him in that role as best they can. But again, everybody moved up a notch. He's taking on a bigger role than expected. And he's still doing the part. He's still playing it really well. Had his best game of his career thus far against the Panthers, which is great. 2 quarterback hits, an extra hurry tacked on top of that as well for his fumble. I mean, he's starting to make an impact. This is a young player with a lot of upside. Cowboy fans in particular may remember the nickname Almost Anthony, which is what they called Anthony Spencer, their former first-round pick at edge rusher, who was basically the Robin to DeMarcus Ware's Batman back in the day. He would always get pressure and never quite finish the play when it comes to getting sacks for the longest time. We're talking about a rookie here, so you expect that sort of that finishing, that next step to come. Although it's not there yet with no sacks. He's got, 8 quarterback hits, again, had to hurry this week as well. So he's getting around the ball and around the quarterback and really starting to impact the pocket here. You're seeing that growth. So it's a good call out, even if the overall grading isn't spectacular just yet. It is absolutely on the ascension here, sort of capped off by his performance against Carolina. He's going to take on a bigger role as time goes on. I think at the end of the year, you're going to look back and this is going to be someone that we all have pegged for a big breakout in 2026 once he has a year under his belt, because all the tools are there. He was just kind of thrust forward into a bigger role than expected, because nobody really expected the Micah Parsons trade to actually take place and to have him leave the Cowboys. But big things are ahead for Ezeiruaku.
I want to talk about Jaxson Dart a little bit, right? Jaxson Dart stepping in 3 weeks ago. And if I told you that he's 2-1 and the one loss he has is against the Saints, but the 2 wins are against the Chargers and the Eagles, right? You probably wouldn't have believed me. But Jaxson Dart, like 67.4 offensive grade, don't think really tells the full story, right? So you have to go in a little bit deeper, right? 76.3 rushing grade and a 61.1 passing grade, 3.03 time to throw, 3 big time throws, and 2 turnover-worthy plays. So I think the story that I see and what I see on TV is this is a player that is going to be volatile. but isn't really afraid to take risks, right? That's both kind of throwing the ball and running the ball. He takes some hits that I definitely don't want my quarterback to take, but he's showing that he's competitive, right, in the NFL, which is something that Giants really haven't had for some time. So Giants fans, I'm sure, still very cautiously optimistic about Jaxson Dart. But this new brand of football that they're playing with Jaxson Dart is intriguing, right? And there's another guy on this list that I have much higher, but it's Cam Skattebo, right? RB2 overall in PFF grading with an 82.1 offensive grade, 82.8 running grade, 3.6 yards after contact, and a 79.4 receiving grade. Like the two of those guys together, right? Maybe they, share a brain, right? Like maybe there's a little bit of this kind of like, be the dummy, hit your head
between
into the
two
wall,
of them. There's one brain, like in total. Is that what it is? Like,
yeah, like maybe, but it's fun football, right? It's hard-nosed football, and that's what the Giants have lacked for like a few years now, right? When was the last time you had a guy like Cam Skattebo on the Giants? So I think those two guys combined are just making this team very, very exciting. And again, Giants fans are going to be cautious because they've had a couple years in a row where they have some rookies that step up and play really well for them. And then it goes to year two, and they turn back into those pumpkins. But those two guys right now definitely have to give them their flowers, and the Giants have to be excited.
All right, I'm going to be a bit of a cold water guy, not necessarily, but and I'm glad I didn't follow the rules because there's going to be overlap in a lot of our names, I feel like, because I had both of these guys down for discussion. So you kind of touched a bit on some of the reasons to be cautious with a Jaxson Dart. I mean, I think most people have seen, maybe not, the clip that's sort of going around for when he scrambled to the right along the right sideline and just like launched his head at the defender. Did you? I think I texted you that, but if you haven't, I'll try to dig it up and see who exactly posted or tweeted it. And maybe I'll tweet it out from my personal account. But you can't have your quarterback playing that way in the NFL. That just can't happen. You have to really rein it in. Like, let Cam Skattebo be the guy. Let him be the bull in the china shop. Let him be the guy that takes on all the contact and all the craziness. Let him be that guy. You don't have to run through the brick wall. Just let him go through the brick wall, and then you just kind of just walk through the opening. You don't have to also jam your head into the wall. You're the quarterback. It's a bit of an interesting stylistic clash because from one perspective, if I see my quarterback or I had my young quarterback and I was excited to watch Dart really grow and develop with Malik Neighbors this season and watch them sort of grow and develop their chemistry. And now that's not there. I'm kind of thinking the explosive plays aren't really going to be there. The game-changing, game-breaking, big-time throws, it's not going to be a big part of our offense because that guy is gone. Malik Neighbors is out for the year. So I want to see Jaxson Dart work more within structure from the pocket, take what the defense gives him, kind of stay on schedule, work the huddle, work the offense from there. And Neighbors is not here, and he's still just throwing caution to the wind, which, yeah, it's great. You want that part of your game in the quarterback. But, maybe that shouldn't be like the baseline. That should be like the cherry on top of the sundae. And right now they're just working off of that. Like that is their whole energy source right now. So that's a little worrisome to me. I want it to be a little more stable stylistically than what we've seen so far. And as for
Skattebo, when you beat the Eagles, it doesn't matter. They're just so excited.
True.
And I mean, tell me this doesn't remind you of like a little bit Will Levis when his rookie year was here.
Is that supposed to be a good thing?
No, I'm just saying like we had made that comparison before. And I mean, everything we're saying, it's like, I feel like I talked about this 2 years ago.
Yeah. We're much higher on Jaxson Dart, even with whatever concerns we have, than we were on Will Levis. The thing about Skattebo, though, is, he's the highest graded rookie running back right now. He's rushed for 24 first downs, but
second highest overall running back.
Yeah, don't worry. We'll get there because a lot of name running backs are just, some of them haven't even gotten the ball. They're just not even giving the ball to theirs in Philadelphia. But that's a whole nother discussion. But Skattebo's yards after contact per rush is 7th among rookies at just 3.06. So he's trucking guys, and he's just kind of falling over. That's behind R.J. Harvey, Quinshai Judkins, Bill Krosky-Merritt, Omarion Hampton, Ashton Genty, and Bashal Tootin. So while there's a lot of hype and fun around Skattebo, when it comes to yards after contact, he's not actually like just really breaking things open. And his pass blocking is really bad so far. I mean, what's crazy is that his 16.0 pass blocking grade is actually not the worst among rookie running backs because Travion Henderson has a 9. So that's one thing that's keeping Travion Henderson from having a bigger role. But also, I guess on the flip side of that coin, to be a little bit positive, Skattebo does have the third most 10-plus yard rushes among rookies behind only Genty and Krosky-Merritt. And we know his offensive line isn't the greatest, even if Andrew Thomas is back.
And there's no receivers, right?
And there's no receivers. Yeah, so he's probably dealing with some heavy boxes and everything. So while he might not be making people miss, and he's not necessarily just breaking things open when he does get contacted, like you might expect because of his physical profile and what you kind of expect to see from a runner who runs with that style, could be that just dudes just don't want to tackle him. So he is getting some open lanes and getting those 10-plus yard runs because they just don't want to get in his way, kind of like Derrick Henry. And I'm not obviously saying that Cam Skattebo is Derrick Henry by any means, but that could be an element to his game. So there's all this to say, like, yeah, I'm excited too. It's fun to watch. Everybody enjoyed that Thursday night game because that was just a lot of fun football when you compare that to 4 straight tush pushes from the opponent, right? So everybody wants to see more of Jaxson Dart and Cam Skattebo. I'm just trying to kind of show more of the picture and say, hey, let's maybe clean up a little bit of this other stuff so that, I don't know, this thing is sustainable and Jaxson Dart's not in a body cast by week 14 because it was fun while he beat the Eagles, but he never learned to protect himself.
Yeah, those are good points, and I think very, very fair points. One of the things we always stress, and I'm going to move on to the next player here, but one of the things we always stress is how rookies really need momentum, right? Like when you miss training camp, it's going to hurt. When you miss a big part of the season, it's going to hurt. And a guy that you and I were super high on, still are, is Josh Simmons for the Chiefs. And right now, 65.0 offensive grade is good, right? 73.0 pass blocking grade is good for a rookie. But we finally started to see some momentum. In week 4, 73.3 offensive grade, 76.1 in week 5, but then misses week 6 for personal reasons, and we don't really know when he's going to return, right? Coming from an injury this offseason, took a little bit of time to get started. We finally started to see some of those results and some of that good play. And then you miss time, right? So that's a guy I am excited about, and I have him on as number 8 on my list, even though you don't have one. I have him as number 8 on my list of rookie exciting performances throughout the year. But missing time is always going to be concerning to me in your rookie year because it's a predecessor of you missing time throughout the rest of your career, and that's something that usually leads to an early end of a career. I'm not saying that's the case here, but it's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and just get into a rhythm. You just got to get into a rhythm, especially as a young player. You got to find your footing, and that's hard to do when you're in and out of the lineup. So, I mean, we'll see. The Chiefs, we know the Chiefs' season is typically longer than everyone else's, even though they're not necessarily a shoo-in as we sit here today. But their season typically lasts well into January, so he'll have some extra games to find his footing, but you need him to be ready to go when that time comes if you're the Chiefs. And also just all 22, you probably drafted this guy pretty damn highly. You want to see him continue to grow and develop. So by all means, we want to see him back on the field. We're excited to see him back on the field, but it's just got to happen.
So I'm starting to get into the mainstream names of my rankings here. Is there somebody else that you have that you want to talk about that's maybe a little less mainstream?
He's mainstream in my heart, but Jacob Parrish, my guy, Jacob Parrish. Love Jacob Parrish. So I'm going to do something that's totally disingenuous, but just stay with me for a second, okay? So Jacob Parrish, yes, in week 5, he got absolutely wrecked against Seattle, gave up 7 catches on 7 targets for 88 yards, had his lowest grade of the season by far, 28.2 overall. If you take that out, and just bear with me, if you take out his week 5 grade, which there's going to be bad performances in there from rookie cornerbacks of all positions. He is the 4th highest graded coverage corner overall in the NFL. Overall, not just among rookies. This is overall. But here's the main thing. And now we're going to go back to the whole picture, including his disastrous week 5 performance. He's got 14 stops. As a reminder, a stop is a tackle that constitutes a failure for the offense. So if it's 3rd and 10 and you give up a hitch route for 6 yards, tackle the receiver 4 yards before the first down marker, that's a stop. Okay. He's second among all rookies in stops behind Carson Schwesinger, a linebacker who has 16 of them. Okay. For reference, of those 14, 10 of them are in coverage. And he's got the 8th lowest yards given up per reception. I believe that's in the entire NFL, not just among rookies. So what does that all mean? It means he's in position consistently in coverage from the slot. So even if he's giving up the catch, he's not giving up the catch where he's getting beat for first downs. He's not getting beat so badly or he's getting put out of position that he's missing tackles and giving up yards after the catch. So this is a cornerback with a tough assignment. Over 80% of his snaps are in the slot, and he's staying in phase. So as he gets more comfortable at the catch point and playing the ball and really picking up on tendencies of the opposing offense, instead of being in position for stops, which still gets you off the field, he's going to be in position for incompletions and takeaways. So you see sort of, and again, we liked him in the draft process as well. So you see a young, talented player in his role, in a defined role, starting to really sort of take those next steps here. And you see the flashes. He's consistently in position. That typically bodes very well as they grow and develop. So there's going to be growing pains for the rest of his rookie year, probably because he's a rookie cornerback in the NFL. But he's shown you everything you need to see to be encouraged about his future moving forward. So I'm a big fan of Jacob Parrish so far and what he can become moving forward.
Solid call out. I mean, we talk about how good Tampa Bay is at developing corners. So, a lot of good things to look forward to there. Let's stay on cornerback, right? Will Johnson. He's a guy that preseason we both liked. Me maybe a little bit more than you, but still like 78.7 coverage grade so far. Good for cornerbacks, 6 in the NFL, not just rookies, all cornerbacks. 5 pass breakups on the season. But the thing that's crazy, Ray, 13 completions allowed so far on the season for 79 yards. Again, not just in rookies, that's 3rd lowest amount of yards for receivers that have played, 50% of the snaps, right? 417 snaps, something like that. That's incredible for a rookie to be able to do that. And especially, again, on a Cardinals team that doesn't really offer a lot from a defensive front standpoint, right? This isn't a team with a stud edge rusher that's consistently getting after the passer. Says a lot about Will Johnson. It also tells me quarterbacks are probably staying away from him, right? They're not targeting this guy, which again just goes to tell you how good maybe he really is.
Yeah, I had him on my list, pretty much the same exact notes, same metrics down, catches, yards, 5 pass, like everything. I had to check to make sure I wasn't like presenting my screen on the feed here because you were just it sounded like you were reading off my notes. But I have Will Johnson down for the exact same reasons. Gave up a touchdown in his most recent game, but he's flashing, and we obviously knew the talent was there. We just had some injury questions, and there were some speed questions that he just couldn't answer in the pre-draft process. But he's kind of showing us that, hey, the tape wins out, and the tape is the tape.
Yeah, and there are 2 linebackers that I think everybody's been talking about. So let's just talk about them really quick, okay? So linebacker 15 overall, right? Again, not just rookies, is Carson Schwesinger, 74.8 defensive grade, 77.9 run defensive grade, and 16 stops, right? You talked about your boy having 14? So one of the guys above him is Carson Schwesinger with 16. Jihaad Campbell is linebacker 7 right now with 86.1 defensive grade, 84.4 coverage grade, and 10 stops. They're very different players right now, but again, both of them doing things differently in their own respective way, very successfully. Schwesinger more as a run defending linebacker for the Browns with those. We talked about how, when you have those other guys in front of him, when you have Myles Garrett and Mason Graham and some of the other guys they have, it does take the pressure off. Jihaad Campbell, kind of a similar thing, right? Jordan Davis is in front of him, and a lot of those edge rushers are getting pressure. But Jihaad Campbell being able to have an 84.4 coverage grade as a true rookie is something I don't know if I've seen in my time doing this. So very excited about those 2 linebackers, and something, again, I don't know if we'll see that again.
No, it's really tough to do, and it's interesting how we keep talking about these names and they're on the Eagles and they're on the Browns. Like, these are two really good defenses, and it just seems like they all feed off of each other. They all make each other better. For all the faults and the warts that the Browns have, it's certainly not on the defensive side of the ball and not in that defensive front because of young players like Carson, Schwesinger, and then we've spoken enough about the Eagles, and we know all about that. Even with their most recent struggles, you still see the flashes and the talent that these young guys have, like Jihaad Campbell. And again, health permitting, it's going to stay that way for quite a while for him. So, not a surprise to see names from those teams on the list. And it's good because we need more linebackers in all 22 that we can count on. Someone who's playing, I don't think we need to spend too much time on this, but someone who's playing too much linebacker for me, you probably know where I'm going with this already. Just want to mention Abdul Carter, a 69 grade is nice, no pun, as it is. So, like, let's not overreact to the fact that we thought he was going to be like DPOY and everything else, because he's playing more linebacker and playing in the box more than we anticipated. He's still 13th in pressures and 14th in hurries among all edge rushers in the NFL while playing too many snaps at off-ball linebacker, so he'll be just fine. I just wanted to call that out while we were still on the topic of quote-unquote linebackers, even though he's not really a linebacker.
Yeah, his usage literally drives me insane. So I don't want to talk about it at all. And I figured maybe you'd want to talk about these receivers a little bit, because I do think it's pretty funny that the two guys that we've gone back and forth on a few times, right, Tet McMillan and Emeka Egbuka, are currently wide receiver 13 and 14 respectively.
So you know what's really interesting? This is good stuff here, because I didn't really write those guys down because I figured you would talk about them. So I wrote down a completely different receiver in Luther Burden, if we want to talk about that.
Let's talk about all three of them. All three of them. I mean, I don't know where Luther Burden fits on that list right now, but the debate between Tet and Egbuka is going to keep going on, right? Wide receiver 13 is Tet, 14 is Egbuka, 75.9 for Tet, 74.6 for Egbuka. And the thing that I think is different about them that's going to continue to kind of tell this narrative is McMillan's been playing mostly X receiver. Like, he's playing as a true number one guy, where Egbuka is playing just as much in the slot as he is out wide. And they're using him kind of as that gadget player a little bit more. Which do you prefer? Which is more valuable, right? I think they're both extremely, extremely valuable. But it kind of tells the story where, you know, I've said it before, is like, I think what Ted is doing is a little bit more predictable, repeatable, that kind of stuff, right? Like, I think it'll continue, where Egbuka, now he also has an injury to his hamstring that he's getting an MRI on, but, you know, is it as repeatable? Is it as, you know, when the other guys aren't there, when things start to change, like, will it continue in the way that it's continuing? Not necessarily something we have to predict, because right now we could just enjoy the fruits of our labor if you drafted them. But curious how you think Luther Burden kind of fits into that conversation and debate.
Well, I'm going to stick with Egbuka for just a second here, because I think the interesting dichotomy with him too is among rookies with at least, 10 targets or whatever it is thus far this year, Ted McMillan is the highest graded receiver against man coverage. Emeka Egbuka is the lowest graded rookie receiver against man coverage.
Very interesting.
But against zone, Emeka Egbuka is the highest graded receiver against zone coverage, and McMillan is third. So he's a little more balanced overall, which is where I tend to lean. And then you kind of mentioned, we'll see about the health stuff with Egbuka anyway. I mean, everybody's dropping like flies over there in the receiver room for Tampa Bay. So we'll see where that ends up. But I tend to lean more towards that beat man coverage kind of guy. Against zone, I'll scheme someone open. Other offensive minds think, you know, with good man beaters, you can scheme open against man coverage. So it's all really flavors of ice cream there. But I do tend to lean towards the more sort of balanced sort of performance overall from Tet McMillan. And then you consider the fact that he's doing that, and, you know, without Baker Mayfield, who's playing as one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league today anyhow. And that kind of tips the scales in his favor, in my view. But Luther Burden, I think, is a more slow burn than either of those two guys. He's just starting to heat up. His numbers aren't fantastic. They spread the ball around a lot more over there in that Ben Johnson offense. And it's a new, rookie head coach who's still just kind of growing with the team. But Luther Burden last night caught all 4 of his targets in pretty bad conditions. Looks like the offense is settling in now. He leads all rookies with 7.7 yards after the catch per reception and 3.13 yards per route run. 74.4 overall graded season so far. I didn't write down the rank of where that is, but it's pretty darn high up. That's a good overall grade. So in his own right, just much more quietly than either of those two guys, he's having a quality year. He just doesn't have as big of a role on his team as the other two do. So he's just kind of like the guy in the shadows, just kind of in the background doing his thing, doing his job, and not really getting much attention for it. But I do think as that offense evolves and Caleb gets more and more comfortable, again, with that first year scheme, if you continue to be sort of a yards after the catch playmaker, everyone said that's the Amon-Ra St. Brown mold. That's sort of the vision that they have for Luther Burden. So maybe it's once everybody's comfortable there, that's when you start to see that part of the game really take off and make some big plays happen. So it hasn't happened yet, but it's sort of simmering below the surface and still giving you quality performances quietly while not getting much attention. So I just think, we can all argue about Ted versus Ibuka, and Luther Burden is just going to be there quietly, just in the corner, just giving you solid performances week to week, probably as your wide receiver 3. And then maybe on Thanksgiving or something, we're going to look up and he's going to start really turning it on. That wouldn't surprise me in the least.
Yeah. And, I think when we did our kind of rankings before the draft, Luther Burden was my receiver 2 in terms of talent on film that we could see today. Travis Hunter was number 1 if we were just projecting, right, which moved Burden down to 3. But in terms of like what I saw on film, it was Burden at 2. And when you look at the situations, right, Ted is basically the only legitimate receiver on the Panthers, so he's going to get a lot of opportunity. Egbuka is in a kind of crowded room, but everybody's been hurt, and has Baker, who's a very established quarterback, as his quarterback, who also throws for like 4,000 to 5,000 yards a year, where Burden is in Chicago with an extremely crowded room of weapons and a quarterback that really isn't proven yet. So when you look at situations, I think his is easily the hardest to make an impact. And like you said, the fact that he's doing it kind of slow and steady, I think is a good thing for him. And I think as that team, it's going to depend on if Caleb Williams really develops himself and becomes, a force in the NFL. But if that does happen, I think you're going to see those two guys start to develop together, and we'll see that Burden breakout kind of down the road a little bit longer.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, he's kind of like the silent but deadly killer there that just shows up and maybe wins the damn league for you. Who knows? I don't know how many names you got because again, I don't do lists and numbers. I got a couple. Do you want to talk about how great Tyler Warren is? Or do you want to leave that?
Tyler Warren's the only one I have left. But before we go into that, I do want to tell everybody to like and subscribe to wherever you're watching your podcast, right? If it's on YouTube, if it's on Apple, if it's on Spotify, doesn't matter. Like and subscribe, right? It's a way that you could support us, right? We don't ask for your financial benefits or anything like that. We just ask that you like and subscribe because it really does help us get seen. It helps more people find All 22 and play the All 22 game, which is why we're here, right? I do have Warren. Warren is my number 1. He is the last guy on my list. He is the guy that I'm still most excited about and the guy that I still have the most hope on. It's Tyler Warren. Before we talk about him, why don't you go through whoever else you have left?
All right. So we'll put Tyler Warren for the end. I got one more name, and it's like kind of not really a positive, so it's good to get this out of the way before ending on a good note. Yeah. Safety Jonas Sanker for the Saints. Out of the University of Virginia. I tried to get excited about him because some people are talking about him, and he's not grading terribly poorly or anything, but I just couldn't. The tackling is bad, which tells me he's likely out of position. I talked about how great Jacob Parrish was when it comes to his stop rate and his tackling, showing that he is in position. Not necessarily the case with Jonas Sanker. The coverage grade is okay, but it's the Saints. People aren't necessarily throwing on them to win games. They're typically behind, so the opponent is typically ahead, so they're typically running the ball. So I just think those more variable sort of grading metrics there haven't really been tested as much as they otherwise would. given the situation. So currently second highest graded rookie safety at 69.1, which is great, considering all things, but I'm not sold that it's necessarily sustainable. Again, 26.9 tackling grade, 67.4 in coverage, but how much, again, that can fluctuate. How variable is that going to prove to be eventually? I'm not so sure. 23.5% missed tackle rate is just way too high. So some people look at that initial grade on the surface and they're really excited about it. And I can't get there just yet. I see some areas of concern here. So maybe let's check back on Thanksgiving and see if things have gone for the better or worse there. But I wanted to throw that out there because I see Jonas Sanker's name bubbling up a little bit, and I'm just not there yet.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that is pretty negative. Tyler Warren, let's do it. He is my number one still, and probably won't get off that for a little while unless something, knock on wood, catastrophic happens. But he's currently tight end 5 overall, 73.9 offensive grade. But again, the reason I go for Tyler Warren is because he has a 74.3 receiving grade while also still having a 63.4 run blocking grade. We talked about how Kyle Pitts has the best run blocking grade of his career with a 64.3. They have just about the same run blocking grade, and this is Tyler Warren's rookie year. He came into the NFL prepared for what the NFL was, and that is a game where tight ends have to really be able to do both, right? In order to be great, you have to be able to do both. Tyler Warren came out, week 1 with a 90.4 grade against Miami, really showed us what he was, blew the door open, right, to the NFL and said, I'm here. Had a great week 2 against Denver, then some down weeks against Tennessee and LA. But the last 2 weeks, Las Vegas, 74.6 grade, and Arizona, 71.2, has touchdowns in both of those last 2 games with over 100 total receiving yards. You can line them up all over as well, right? 71 snaps from the slot, 28 out wide. There's just nothing this guy can't do for me, right? And that's exactly what I want at tight end for a position that, again, is very, very difficult to get a guy into the NFL that knows what he's doing on day one. It takes years. So to get a guy like Tyler Warren that does it immediately again, it's a lower value position, but the rarity aspect makes Tyler Warren extremely, extremely valuable. And he's a guy that if I drafted, I would have been super pumped about.
19 of his catches have gone for first downs, which is second only to Tet McMillan's 22.
Shout out to Tet.
Yeah. And he's second among all rookie pass catchers with 7 yards after the catch per reception behind Luther Burden, who we talked about recently too. So that's one thing that I never got. Some people said I don't see the yards after catch aspect with him as a prospect. This is just mind boggling to me because he absolutely was a yards after catch guy in college. He literally ran away from several Big Ten defenses just with the ball in his hands. But in any event, this guy can do it all. He's not only getting open and making the catch, but he can make things happen after the catch. You mentioned the run blocking grade, which is typically the last thing to come. So as he gets, older, more mature and more time in this league, you expect the run blocking grades to go up, and it's already a decent baseline in the 60s right now anyway. And again, he does everything. Like you said, he lines up everywhere, quarterback, in the backfield, in line, traditional tight end, in the slot and out wide. And he's already handling all of that responsibility very well. So as he gets even more comfortable, again, the sky really is the limit here with what they can do with someone like him and put him in advantageous positions moving forward. So the sky really is the limit there. But even after the catch, even after he gets open, he can make things happen with the ball in his hands. And I think that's sort of the last element there that allows you to have those game-breaking performances that take your weekly score from 78 or whatever it is to that 89, 90 type possible league-winning weeks, is when you can break games open with the ball in your hands and turn a 15-yard catch into a 40-yard catch because you broke a tackle and gained an additional 25 yards. That's the type of stuff that Tyler Warren can give you at the tight end position, and most tight ends cannot do that.
All right, people, we are about a third of the way through the season, which means we will probably do this exercise again when we are 2/3 of the way through the season. But thank you all for tuning in. If you haven't yet, give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and X at all22_PFF. And again, give us a review wherever you watch or listen to your podcast, and have a great rest of your day.
On the go.